Welcome to our Intimacy Reigniter podcast. And this is the inaugural podcast today. And I am Marla, and this is my husband, Jami, and this is our really good friend, Megan. And we are so excited today to talk about intimacy, which you might be surprised means things that you may not even realize it means. And so Jami and I, we are intimacy mentors and relationship coaches, and we've been doing this since the dinosaurs back, probably for sure since the Tyrannosaurus or whatever it is. We have been together for 36 years, and we've been doing this work for over 28 years. And we are very, very excited and very passionate about bringing relationships back together or more intimate than they've ever been before. We are all about helping couples recapture that passion and that intimacy and that connection that they had at the beginning. And we're also excited about helping couples who are just starting out start out the right way and not have to make a lot of the mistakes that Jami and I made, which are plenty, let me tell you.
Don't make the mistakes we made.
Bum, bum, bum. So welcome. We are so excited that you are joining us today. And so one thing that I think is really important is that you get to talk for a minute and tell us what you're passionate about.
Well, I'm primarily passionate about you.
Ooh.
That's my number one priority in life these days, and it's so much fun. I've been sharing with the men's group that I lead. I actually lead two men's groups, but I've been telling them we've hit this like teenage years in our 50s.
It's true,
which is the best. It's like the best of all worlds. You get to be this connected and have this much fun sexually, emotionally in life. I mean, we spend every waking minute together, and I don't get enough of you. So that's my primary passion. And of course, then helping others, getting that, working with clients, I think without that, I get depressed, which may be a problem. I may need to get some help for that. Some coaching, I don't know. But no, I love it. I love helping people. I love when it works, and it always works when people do the work. So that's me. I'm also really passionate about our grandchildren.
Ah, yes.
It's surprisingly humbling to have a 4-year-old and a 2 3/4-year-old.
It really is.
That can dominate your world pretty quickly.
My goodness, they're the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody tells you that about grandchildren, but the reality is it's true. So it is exciting, too.
I believe it, yeah.
You're a newer grandma than I am. Mm-hmm. So are you a grandma? Are you Gigi? Are you a Mimi?
I am called Grand Meg because it's my biological grandbaby, but she also has grandparents because she was adopted, or my daughter was adopted. So they call me Grand Meg.
I love that.
Well, we need to introduce you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going there.
Okay,
that was my next move.
Good. Yes.
Okay, and to my right is the fabulous Megan McCaleb, and I'm telling you, she is a phenomenal human being, and she has so much creativity and so much excitement and also so much passion about what she does. She gets to ignite the, what would you say, the excitement around speaking.
Yeah, like what the excitement around what our individual passions are and our messages and what our purpose is and how to really amplify that to the world in a meaningful way. So a lot of it has very parallel tethers to what you guys do, which is why I was excited to be able to join you for this adventure in podcasting, because there's so much stuff that I really believe in that space of knowing ourselves, and then it helps us to better connect with other people too. And that's a really huge component of public speaking that people probably don't think about, is how to really actually connect in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's true. I believe we got connected when you did the Idaho Laugh Fest, when you put that together.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was trying to remember exactly when it was, because we've known each other for a long time.
I know.
I feel like around a decade or so.
It's about 12 years.
Actually, yes, because I remember you came to our place, and I think Ariel connected with you, and she said, you got to meet Megan.
Right.
And then you came to our place, and we talked about Laugh Fest.
And you sponsored Laugh Fest.
Yes, we did.
We were very
way
proud
back in
sponsors
the
of Laugh
original.
Fest.
Yes. Yep. And we did a couple of workshops of Laugh Together, Love Forever, little improv hybrid
So
with
much
some of the things
fun.
that you did. Yeah.
The yes and.
Exactly. Yep.
Which is your yes
It's the
sandwich.
foundation. Yeah, oh yeah. Gotta
Pretty
eat
awesome.
up that yes sandwich.
Gotta always have the yes sandwich. And then you are doing something very
cool.
not really different, but different.
Bigger.
Yeah, bigger. Talk about that. Tell us the name of it, why you are doing it. What is it about?
The Ovation series.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me a platform to talk about that. So Ovation is the name of like this training space. The speaker series is one element, and it's essentially an opportunity for people to step on stage and know how to share their message and actually capture professional recording. Because if people really want to expand their reach and build their credibility, having video content where a client can see the way they present themselves, that's what sells people for a public speaking gig on a more regular basis and at a higher rate. And a lot of times it's people that are like, well, I wish I could get a TED Talk or something. And then you have to throw your hat in the ring with thousands of other applications, or you might not have the right connections and you may never get chosen. The Ovation Speaker Series allows people to choose themselves and to really fast track. You know, like you were saying, people get to actually like fast track and do the things as right the first way instead of making a whole lot of missteps. So I just essentially took my decade plus worth of public speaking and packaged it so people can just drink through the fire hose and learn how to get those assets and have a beautiful recorded demo in front of a live audience, because that's what matters. Like, see if it really works. And I love the idea of an ovation, because that's something where people are literally rising to their feet. They're so moved by a speech or a performance. And it's what can we bring to our communication styles and our energy that compels people to move and take action. And so that's really what that culminated from. It's something that's been in the hopper here for quite a few years. And after the festival kind of laid to rest, this kind of became the next.
It's so awesome. Movement is life. There's a great quote in World War Z, and it's Brad Pitt, right? And he's running from the zombies, and they duck into this. New York building, right? And it's an apartment, and there's a family there, and they're like, okay, the horde went by, and he's like explaining to them, I've been around places of war, and the people that move live, right? People that stay get run over, right? And so if you don't move, you die. Movement is life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I love the idea behind the ovation, and it is that movement is life. We tell our clients all the time. Jami will tell this illustration, and movement is life. You have got to be moving. If you're not, Coach Pete, when he was here with the BSU Broncos, who we love, he said, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. So you must be moving forward if you're going to get where you want to be.
You can't stay the same.
And that's what we've gotten to experience each other these years and watch the movement forward that you have done has been beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
I love it. So tell me, we were actually at your Ovation.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Series, and that truly was magical and also fun.
Good.
And entertaining and very informative.
Awesome.
And
all the right elements.
Each person, they brought such their unique selves. And I know that was your inspiration for them. To show them how to do that.
Yeah, it's pointing out what we can see in other people that they can't because they're too close. And I'm sure that you guys can relate to that too. You're like, hello, you got all the tools in you, you just have to work. Like Jami said, I wrote it down. It always works when you put in the work. And so it's teaching people how to actually engage and take action. And so for someone to be a compelling speaker or to communicate in a compelling way, they have to have a true story that's relevant to them and authenticity, some kind of lesson that's been learned and articulated in a way that has a tool or a step or something pen pickup worthy that people go, oh, I can do that, and know how to take action. And I just see it as this reciprocal place of sharing information so we can just glean these different nuggets that are applicable for us in that season. We're all hopefully I mean, I say all, but I know there's people in this world who don't want to grow. They
We
don't
see
want
you.
to thrive.
We see you. Where are you?
We know
There you
you're
are.
out there.
Growing
All right, we
is
see you.
hard.
For those of us who are on team personal development, because it is hard.
Yep.
It's like we might hear something 2, 3, 4, 10, 12 times before we go, and then we finally get it and know how to put it into action. And so it's really helping people to step into that space and have the give and take. Like, how can we be serving each other with our messages and our tools and lessons?
What I
awesome.
love
That's
so
something to hear.
much, I mean, I love so much about you, but what I love
Well,
so
this
much
isn't about me today.
about-
Go on.
That's right. Please tell me.
more. What I love about it is that wanting people to step into their authentic selves and showing them a path to step into that authentic self.
Yeah.
And that is so important for Jami and I, for our clients.
Yeah.
People don't show up authentically.
Right.
Scary.
And then there's the guard is up and then they aren't able to connect. And I think that is a great way to transition into, like, when you talk about your platform is bringing back intimacy. And I'm like, where did it go? Where did it go? Where did we lose it? Why did we lose it? Like, let's unpack that a little bit, because you're absolutely right. When you see someone and they're in it and you're like, yes, there it is. And I like cry every time I see people presenting when they're like stepping into their best self. And I'm like, you did it. It's been you all along. You just had to peel back those layers and reveal that gem inside. So I feel like we need to start there. Like, where did the intimacy go?
Yeah. Where did it go? It was there and now it's gone. And
Yeah.
where did it go? That's a really great place to start.
Yeah, I love that. Because the reality is that the intimacy has been, I believe intimacy and the true form of intimacy, of the emotional, sexual, very, I don't know, symbiotic, that symbiotic space of emotional, sexual for a couple, that people don't dive, they want it, they're either one or the other is kind of more important to them. And they don't realize that they are so intertwined. And for us, the intimacy went because we didn't actually ever have it. We didn't know how to have it.
Well,
So
okay,
it was never
okay.
even there.
I'm like, tell me more.
Well,
how did you?
Two things occur to me. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, how did you know it wasn't there? I'm like, no, you tell me
question.
more. Yeah. And
Okay,
then
here's the funny thing. This comes down to neurology a lot, right? And so when you date, okay, first of all, you have one quadrant of your brain that's kind of like being right or left-handed. So you have a preference. You're born with the stronger connections in one quadrant of your brain. Everybody has that.
Okay.
And so, but when you date, it's like all four quadrants of your brain get turned on. That newness, right? It's the dopamine kind of, adrenaline kind of stuff that gets going and it gets sparky. And it's
Oxytocin.
like, oxytocin gets involved, hopefully, sooner than later. But what happens is that once the conquest has been made, so to speak, and I'm not talking about just having sex. I'm talking about, this relationship's stable and we've been going for a while. 6 months or so might be the longest this would go. That goes away. So people they go to their primary, and now they're just, it was 8 quadrants with the two of you, and now it's only 2 that are really operating. And so there's a drop. There's a drop in the dopamine. And that's a really interesting thing that we're learning. We have a book coming out that we've been doing some research for.
Awesome.
It's called Sex, the Other S Word.
Yep.
And so,
Nice.
but it ends up being a book about emotionality, because guess what you need? You have to have this emotional, sexual connection where the emotional cup gets filled first. And now there's good tension for sexuality.
And for Jami and I, where we started understanding this to some degree, we were in our 20s. So we got married in 1988. And in 1995, we were always looking for, how can we be better? How can we do better? How can we learn more? And we were just like these, give us whatever you got, right? And so we ended up being trained as facilitators and coaches for a program called Life Skills International. that is a domestic violence program. And here we are, 27 years old. We go to this training, and I was super excited because Jami's family was clearly dysfunctional. My family was perfect. So I was doing this altruistically to help other people. And Jami would maybe find out some things too, right? So I'm sitting in the training and I'm like, And then like third day in, I am looking at this. He had us look at the lifespan and development, Eric Erickson's lifespan and development. And he goes, so where did you have trauma or significant emotional events in your childhood? And I was like, I can't think of anything. And he goes, okay, what area of development have you had an issue in? Because there's the stages of development, and each age frame has a certain stage. So I said, well, I've had issues with guilt and inferiority, and that runs between like 3 and 11. But he said, okay, in that age range, 3 and 11, I didn't remember much before I was 5. And so he's like, what was going on in your life? I'm sitting there thinking, and I go, oh, at 5 years old, gets a little bit, touchy, and this particular topic is hard. But at 5 years old, I was sexually abused. Didn't even, and had massive guilt and shame around it, but had totally just not really thought about it. Like, was not that big a deal. It's my fault. All the things a 5-year-old comes up with. And I was looking at our girls when they were 5 thinking, how in the world, right? So I had this aha moment of, oh, that happened. And then I didn't tell my parents till I was 8. So that 5 to 8, guilt, inferiority.
Yeah.
And there was huge perfectionism, huge perfectionist. Everything had to be just in its right, proper order, and I had to get good grades and all those things because I needed my control. I needed my life to have this control around it, because if it felt out of control, that was dangerous. And so I was like, this is crazy, and this is really important. I guess I do have issues. And then other things like, I guess my family has some issues too, which was kind of like, oh, really, Marla? and so for me, that was kind of this opening into this space of where, for me, I realized that I was really very shut down sexually because of it, but I didn't know where to go with that. And we weren't really even talking about that. So it's kind of like still internal for me, and this internal dialogue that I was having about myself and my sexuality. And then Jami had his own epiphany during that period of time.
Well, so he's explaining the sexual emotional loop to us, right? This is Paul Hegstrom. You can see John Ritter played Paul Hegstrom
in the
in
90s.
a movie. And so Paul Hegstrom has this great story of recovering from domestic violence, where he almost killed his wife, right?
Oh, wow.
Figured out the stuff and did the work and came back and regained that, and then taught other people how to do it. So we were getting court mandated clients.
Oh, interesting.
Talk about jumping into the fire.
Yeah,
right?
that was a real
that
education.
Was huge for us when we were doing these trainings. But in our training,
so he's explaining the sexual emotional loop, and it has this really, kind of common. Well, what happens is when you over or under bond with your opposite sex parent, it can create issues. And when you you have that over under bonding. And so and it's easier to describe this from boys' point of view, at least from our generation. I think things are shifting in the next generations.
The millennials have a little bit different perspective in this.
But basically from Gen X and older, you can say for a guy that you hit 12 or 13 years old, and the self-soothing that has to do with masturbation gets kind of overused. It's normal to do that, right? It's totally, everybody explores their bodies, and that's a perfectly normal thing. Of course, in the 80s, we never talked about these things, and if you admitted that you masturbated, that was really bad. But now these kids talk about it all the time. So
and we were in a very conservative Christian environment.
Religious environments would also not want you talking about that, at least from my experience.
Yes, ours too.
Yeah.
But what happens is you have this kind of correlation where you depend on that self-soothing to deal with your stress, and then pornography is just too rampant, and so then pornography becomes an issue, and then girlfriends or boyfriends, whatever that is,
high adrenaline sports,
high adrenaline stuff. So we have this new term. So we have first-person shooter video games now. It's called
arousal addiction.
Arousal addiction, And so they're not the kids and a lot of the millennials and even the younger than that, they don't have a lot of interest in sex. And actually, there's a problem happening worldwide where the Japanese have already surpassed the sustainability. In 100 years, there'll be almost no Japanese natives. And Korea, South Korea is the same.
Yeah, they're getting their
stimulation
arousal
elsewhere.
from all these other places.
They're not getting married. They're not
social media.
They're not dating in person. They're dating online.
Oh yeah.
They're literally having a date on their computer or their phone, and that's as far as they get. And they're not really interested in marriage or having babies.
Sexual emotion.
So Paul Hegstrom. So here's Paul Hegstrom, the man, right? He's this like great guy, and he's explaining this to us. And I lean over, and he's telling this story about how this. So what happens is that loop happens,
right?
Where you bond not to the person but to the activity, right?
And you don't have that emotional connection because you're either getting that from your relationship with your opposite sex parent, Jami, with his mom, or you wall it off, or both.
Right. And so then I turned to Marla and I said, "Did you talk to him about my mom?"
Because I always felt like the fifth wheel, right? I would tell him, I feel like fifth wheel, blah, blah. My first Mother's Day, Jami, sweet Jami, he, sent flowers to his mom, and he called his mom and didn't say anything to me. And I'm like,
oh dear.
I was crying, and I don't understand. And he's like, but you're not my mother. And I'm like,
Jami.
Well, then I was angry.
I was 22 years old. I was.
To be fair,
we had the ignorance was a big problem for us in a lot of ways.
Yes,
which is actually kind of helpful when you're writing a book about sex, because that ignorance is actually more pervasive than you might think. Right? People just don't talk about these things, even though the information is out there now.
Yeah,
it's like it's not really functional.
This is so fascinating. So, I mean, okay, yeah, it went away. Intimacy went bye-bye in a lot of different ways and over a long course of time, but also, all sorts of different influences, right? So, how do we bring people to noticing the problem and deciding they want to engage? I mean, my 15-year-old son is even he's had one girlfriend so far. I probably won't say a whole lot of other things because it's not my story to tell. But in the moment, he's just not even interested. He's like, I got burned once, and he likes to spend time at the gym and video games and family time and whatever. And we have very open dialogue around stuff. And what panics me a little is that he's like, I just want to be alone for a long time. And if I ever get married, he's like, I can't imagine sharing space. And so what you guys were saying too, how do we start pulling this full circle with when we're dating and we have the things, all of our whatever quadrants, all the words you were using, I'm not going to remember all those words. But when things turn on, we're looking maybe for the wrong things for people to be filling for us instead of having this inner stability probably, so that our relationships become more of an enhancement. And then we have this dance together. Where are good starting points of being how are we looking for the correct things, and where does it start? Does it start here? And then it gauges how people in the dating space maybe are looking for something different than being like, this guy needs to meet all of my needs, and so that all these boxes are checked and everything will be fine. I know there's 17 questions in there.
There's a lot. There's a lot going on here.
Pick which. It's choose your own adventure.
Yes, that's right. Good question. I'm going to give you a really short answer, and then we can explain it.
Yeah, okay.
You've got to learn what it means to shift from dopamine to oxytocin.
Okay.
So what does it feel like in your body, right? So dopamine.
Wait, real quick. Oxytocin is the love and bonding chemical that we get. Everybody will get when they are, especially the first 2 hours after birth, because we're not born with oxytocin receptors.
Oh, goodness.
But when we're being held by our mama and we're looking into her eyes, nursing, whatever that is, those first 2 hours, you start producing your own oxytocin receptors. And when you nurse, you are producing more oxytocin receptors. How many of us, not me, not Jami, had our mom even coherent? We were taken away.
You just in 60 seconds or less explained what I would assume is the problem with a lot of people is they did not have the healthy bonding, safe little moments as a newborn. which freaks me out. And I totally want to hear like some more expanded space on this, but I tried out a new little thing in a keynote recently that I was like, this thing makes total sense to me. So I'm going to see what this corporate audience thinks of me saying this. And I was like, if I find someone who just seems really off the rails and I can't even understand why they are so like distant from planet Earth, you know, they're just making bad choices and reckless and don't seem to give a crap. And then I will picture them as babies. This is something I've been doing for years because I'm like, that baby, they were a baby and we were all born babies. But which one of us came into a loving set of arms and which of us did not? Yes. And that like neutralizes my rage.
Yeah.
It does.
When I see people doing things that are just unimaginable.
I love it. That's getting curious instead of angry.
Mm-hmm.
And getting curious instead of angry is how you change triggers to reminders.
Ooh.
Right? Love that.
That's the cat. Make a bumper sticker.
Yeah, I know.
Change your triggers to reminders.
Yeah,
Call
right.
for more information.
Exactly.
Okay, so expand a little bit about that. Then going back to
the dopamine
you said
and
the quick,
oxytocin.
the quick answer was the dopamine to oxytocin.
Right.
People will hear those words, though. I'm telling you, a lot of people will hear those words, and they're like, I don't know what that even means.
Obviously. So interestingly, when you dig into this, the further from Central Africa that you go, the more people have what I think is called the R7 gene. And the R7 gene prioritizes dopamine.
Okay.
So
dopamine is that chemical that says get more, do more, find more.
Go further.
I was like, tell this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Because if I say it, hear the gene, like describe it to me like if I'm a kid playing with a toy.
Right.
Yeah.
What is it? What is the dopamine
social
versus?
Media.
Okay.
Going on social media, getting the likes, getting the comments, it feels really good. That's and you're constantly seeking more and more and more and more. That's your dopamine.
And it's making our body go,
going, buying.
Exactly.
For me, I know that I have, I used to be a shopaholic and shopping was my dopamine producer, right? It was like, oh, I feel so good. But then after you have your stuff, it's kind of like, oh.
Okay.
So it's like get as much as you can to feel fulfilled, even though that's not the thing that's going to fulfill you.
So step one really could be for people to inventory honestly with themselves. What are the things that I am doing that is activating this like seeking for attention, fulfillment, desire from outside sources, essentially, because it's different for everyone.
Interestingly, one of the guys shared today in my men's group, he said, look, he's turning 57 or whatever, and he's like, I don't know why, but this week I am in like buying things, a bunch of stuff I don't need to make myself feel better, right?
Yep.
And he was describing dopamine.
Yep. Okay. I love it. I just want to make sure that any listener out there is like, what does this mean to me? Oh, that's someone else's problem. We need people to stop being like, oh, that's not me. Because it's all of us.
Right.
All of us. In
our own unique way.
Every person has their own way of this, seeking that dopamine high, for lack of a better way to say it. And oxytocin is the chemical that if you are fostering it and nurturing it, you are producing more receptors. Adrenaline and dopamine cover the receptors. So if you're using adrenaline and dopamine, you are not going to have the oxytocin. So if you're using adrenaline and dopamine in your sexual experiences, you are not going to have the oxytocin, which gives you that longer lasting, loving, connected feeling.
Yeah.
So our bodies are so amazing because no matter what happened when you were born, after those first 2 hours and nursing or whatever that is with mom, it's okay. It's all fixable. Things like 20-second hugs, intentional 20-second hugs where you end up kind of falling into your partner, ideally, but if whoever, anybody, those produce oxytocin. Petting your dog or your animal, if you love animals, produces oxytocin. Hugging your kids, cheering together, go to BSU football game and you're all cheering together, produces oxytocin. Sing together in a choir. So there's all these ways that you can produce oxytocin.
It doesn't have to be a choir. It could be,
just singing together.
Well, you go into, where do you go?
Karaoke.
Karaoke, yeah.
That place. Yeah. So all those things.
Something that keeps coming up for me too, and I know this is something that I just see in general when I'm like consuming information for my own well-being, but people still confuse that intimate space that it has to always be a partner. But you mentioned like it doesn't have to be. Like we need to find ways that are healthy and not, like the societal framework of what's right and wrong and good and bad relationships, I think has really stifled a lot of people too. Or I'm like, is that correct? Or am I just observing this in a weird way? But it's like, how do we allow people then to feel like, oh, okay, maybe I need a hug or I need something, and we don't know exactly like how, like what's the quick fix when we are kind of noticing that there is a lack?
Well, when a couple, when their relationship isn't working well, going to your partner and saying, hey, I want to start having 20-second hugs isn't necessarily, it would be great if that could be because it could transform the relationship and heal it forward. Generally, there's resentment and pain in the middle there if they're having issues that they don't want to have the 20-second hug. So yes, and then people who aren't in relationships, don't have a significant other. There are beautiful ways that you can connect with other human beings and get that oxytocin that are healthy and that are not sexual. I mean, we're not talking about sexuality or sexual, your sensuality here. We're talking about, and sensuality can be everything. It doesn't have to be sex too, but we're talking about that space of connection, human connection. And I think that one of the greatest issues around being in our little home with our garage, and we're in our home and we're not really connecting with other human beings, and we're on our phones, we're reaching. So, are you waking up in the morning reaching for your phone instead of reaching for your partner? I mean, these are all things that are issues, and we're not really moving into the oxytocin. And Jami and I don't think that, yes, we did have oxytocin in our relationship because we were very in love. We're still very in love, but I think we had a lot more adrenaline and a lot more dopamine and a lot of the cortisol.
And I brought that to the relationship because here's the problem. You start to talk about what the quick solution is, and there's no real quick solution.
Sure.
You have to make change.
Those things though could be things that we regularly know how to reach for them in the right way on a regular basis, so that we don't slip into maybe the unhealthy coping mechanisms.
So what happens is we develop strategies.
Yeah. Okay.
Emotion. So you mentioned touch, right? So think about boys, and when is it okay to touch a boy, right? Our little girls were easy. Even at 12, I could still reach over and touch their hair and feel like I could connect with them. But you don't always feel that with a boy, right?
Yeah.
Or
maybe you feel that way, but there's this appropriate.
Yeah, I was going to say this. Our world around us has put parameters of whether or not it's appropriate.
Right. So we call this the shame box.
Yeah.
Right. So boy, girls typically have a web.
Shame web. My work, my life, my this, my that. Everything if shame is touched, it touches all the areas.
Oh yeah.
Whereas in the beginning, a boy can cry, right? They're little and they can cry and they can say, "Oh, it hurts," and "Mommy, kiss it," right? And then suddenly, big boys don't cry.
Yeah, man up.
And that happens to girls too. But the point is, no more crying. So your emotions are not welcome here.
Yeah.
And many of us get that message.
Yeah.
I got it. More aggressively, like, "Shut up! I'll give you something to cry about."
I was. My dad was, "Relax, you're fine."
Right. Again, and what is
low anxiety inducing?
Just relax. You can imagine the first time Jami said to me, "Marla, just relax. It's fine."
I remember it clearly. Actually,
like
we were on a tandem bicycle and going up a hill.
Oh my gosh.
And she was hurting and wanting to quit, and I was like, "Relax. It's gonna be okay. I'll do it." But that was not the right strategy.
No.
No, but so then, okay. So you in this box, and suddenly the box is very small.
Yeah.
And there's no room for those emotions. So we develop strategies.
And no crying.
And no crying.
I mean, Jami, the "shut up, I'll give you something to cry about," he took that to heart. And I don't think I ever saw a tear. Maybe a little wetness in the corner when our daughters were born. But other than that, until in our world, everything went to crap. And in 1999, and there were tears, and I about fell over, like, what's coming out of his eyes right now? But it was like, what's coming out of his eyes right now? Like, there was
Just 12
something
years of
very,
marriage.
yeah.
And she'd never seen me cry.
That's so wild.
And so yeah, and that's a problem because there's actually toxins in tears that don't get released in other ways.
I believe it.
Right? And you can feel the need to cry.
I cry. I give myself a tear bath on the regular and just get those toxins out.
Good.
And just keep on coming back in.
I think the funniest people generally have that. Right. You know, I think that's true. And so I think, yes, there's an emotional quality there that we don't let ourselves have.
Yeah.
And these strategies that we're talking about, interestingly, you learn 50% of everything you're ever going to learn by what age?
It's got to be very young. I don't know. 6?
2.
Oh, okay. 2.
90% by 7. You learn 90% of everything you're ever going to learn by 7 years old.
Okay.
I know. We have doctors.
I'm picturing my children at these different ages
I
and going,
know.
they
know.
Well,
we're
we think
sharp
about
little
walking,
whippersnappers
talking,
when we're small humans,
Right.
soaking it all in.
Well, and think about it.
all the functionality
Yep.
and the things. Yeah, you're talking like
Exactly.
the literal scope of
Everything.
becoming a human.
Well, and the research shows that from the womb, you are absorbing and taking in feeling memories that are your mom's feelings.
Oh, I studied on this one hardcore.
So you know.
Yeah.
And so you're taking on these feelings, and you are taking on these feelings until about a year and a half because you don't have words for what's going on for you.
For sure.
So you're taking on all these other feelings, and then you record them as if they are your own. And later in your life, why am I feeling shame? Or why am I feeling like my mom, when I was in the womb, my mom was done with having kids. I was a surprise for her, but I know that I was a very tragic accident because not when I was born, because then I was whatever. I was such a great baby that my mom was like, "Oh, she's so cute. We're gonna keep her." Well, you know, but I know that I was a good little girl because of that very thing. That
you
in
were
the womb,
stewing in those juices that you better come
she
out
was
as a good girl.
depressed. Yes, she was completely just. Well, she was angry. She was confused. She was all those things, and I have had feelings about not being wanted.
Yeah.
Feeling abandoned, but also these crazy feelings that I know didn't start with me.
Yeah.
And that was learning this stuff in the 90s, which at that time the research wasn't as clear as it is now. They did studies of the kids who were in the womb in New York City 9/11.
Oh,
and these kids, and they're still, it's longitudinal, still going. But when they were 10 is when I was reading this book about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in these studies, all of the kids had signs of PTSD, but the ones in the first trimester, less, a little bit more second trimester, and a whole lot in the third trimester.
Oh,
but they all were affected
Mm-hmm.
by the mother's trauma, anxiety, fear, all of those things.
Yeah.
That's how much we are affected in the womb.
Yeah.
Just the womb experience. Jamie's womb experience was just as bad as mine was. So here we pop out and he was a good
luck, suckers.
Yes. And we were both perfect children because I'm perfect meaning we were the peacemakers.
Yep.
We were obedient. We were funny. We were all these things.
Right, and those are all strategies, right? So we develop these strategies that work for us.
Yep.
The difficulty is, think about this. What strategies before you were 7, when you learned most of everything you ever learned, still work for you today?
Oh, I know a lot of them for me personally. I'm the youngest of 6 in a blended home.
Yeah.
And I know what my mom was going through when she was pregnant with me. My dad was leaving her at the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I still see those things as things that manifest that I'm aware of now
Right.
because
You're aware
I'm
of
like,
it. But it doesn't really work for you though, right?
yeah, I was going to say,
They're
well,
not,
yeah,
like,
your question
functional.
was
They're not
working.
healthy.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, to come back to your question though, those are the things I've identified as things I need to relieve myself the burden of because they were like, you keep saying strategy, which I think of as a positive thing.
Right.
Versus coping mechanism, but they are in fact still similar,
They are,
similar
but,
thing.
But what I'm saying here is, we develop these strategies and they work for a certain time, but they don't work forever.
Right.
They don't always work. But the problem is we don't always, we call them blind spots.
Well, and you bring this into your
And
relationships.
you're bringing all these blind spots.
So I'm bringing all my lovely blind spots into our relationship, and Jami is, and we were this control abandonment cycle. I am the identified controller. He's the identified abandoner. My deepest fear in life coming into our relationship was being abandoned.
Well, guess what I
His
did?
deepest fear in life coming into our relationship was being controlled.
Right.
Especially passive
like,
aggressively.
bye.
So it's like we came into our relationship and these daggers are sticking out of our hearts.
Right.
And then we bump up against each other.
Ow, why does that hurt?
Yeah.
Ow,
And then we get
me.
mad at each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, at the top of the show, you talked about how you want to bring this new level, really. It's not only bringing back the things that maybe have faded away, but also infusing new tools, things that people didn't yet know were actually lacking. Yeah. We know now that intimacy is a lot more, though, than just what a lot of people like socially think of intimacy in the wrong way of it's just sex and just some of those things. It's so much broader than that, right? And you also want to help prevent some challenges for people fresh into relationships. How do we pull together like a couple of either certain points or steps that like what's the starting point for them to go, okay, I need to be willing to accept that I can learn more or I can change. Like, how do we get people to take freaking ownership of themselves in every area?
There's lots of really cool things, but first and foremost, understand what you're feeling.
And share it.
What emotion is coming up in your body. So the emotion, the chemical in your body, emotion is the chemical.
What if people aren't allowed to? Jami, what if guys are like, I'm not allowed to emote? And they're like, I'm not feeling anything.
Exactly. And we have a lot of men that are in that same
you
category.
must know some guys.
So this is the thing about this. When we work with our clients, it's like, we know that some of you are not going to be comfortable with this. Mm-hmm. What we're going to help you do is learn how to not only identify feelings. See how many feelings are on this feeling wheel? That feels overwhelming for most people.
Right.
Especially in our practice, guys.
Yeah.
But not always. Mm-hmm. And so they look at this, they go, what? And we say, okay, we're going to have you start practicing. And we're going to have you start practicing together the feeling language. So that when you are communicating, you're able to say things like, this happened yesterday when you did the laundry. I felt loved, connected, and happy. And then on the other side of the street, the other day when I said something and then you matched my tone, which my tone was a little spicy.
Just a little.
Is spicy on the feeling wheel?
It's the whole top side.
That's just the flavor that comes along with the feeling.
It's the red part of the wheel. And I felt confused and hurt and overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. That's really, and so this is not easy. It's simple, sure. But it is not easy. So we're teaching our clients to first, because you asked about the ways, this is the very first way that we teach our clients how to not only learn to feel their own feelings, but to express them and express them in the language of connection. Yeah. So that they are feeling heard, understood, and valued, both partners.
Yeah.
And so that's a feeling expression is a really important one.
When you're working with your men's groups, Jami, do they get excited about this once they understand it?
No, they're not thrilled about it.
Okay, I was going to say, well, maybe when they start to learn.
Some of them.
Some might not even know what they're feeling.
But I have 12
Do they know how to identify what they're feeling?
A lot of them look at this and go, I got nothing.
But I have 12 guys that's the meeting once a week. And you come in with, you can tell us what's happening in a brief way.
Yep.
The rule is no more than 2 sentences.
Okay.
And then you got to give 3 feelings at the end of your check-in.
Okay, that's great.
And that's how we meet every week. And then we talk about whatever's going on.
Well, it's not about the story.
No.
What we tell our clients, your story is important to us.
Sure.
We want to know, though, what's going on in your heart.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Finland was just voted the happiest country in the world this year or whatever. And so I read the article and it was very fascinating. They have a thing, and I think it's sus, but it's not the sus that we were talking about earlier. It's not suspect. It's like some Finnish word, and it's like a 3-letter word. And they said, it doesn't have a great translation to English, but it's details about feelings.
Ooh.
And it's one of the 7 things that makes them the happiest place in the world.
I believe it.
Right? Is they explain their feelings to each other. That's a thing that in their culture that they literally get down and have, and that's what this is. This is the Feeling Wheel 5.0. And if you can name 3 feelings, in association with your event, briefly say the event, now you're communicating.
Well, and
because like what Marla shared with you, your eyes clicked. You knew what she was saying.
Right.
You could relate totally to what was happening, and there was almost no story.
And all of your men, the men that are in this group, have all learned this, and they've all practiced it.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing practice. And what's interesting about emotions, one of the things that I love to do when I'm doing like a corporate training with improv is there's some different emotional exercises. I'm sure we probably did some at the couples sessions we did years ago. But they will have to mimic or demonstrate, usually non-verbally, but like different things that show like, okay, what does angry look like? Like one of them is actually like, become a statue of emotions. It's like, what is anger? And what is fear? What is grief? And I watch all their body language and stuff, and they think it's just silly as all get out.
Yep.
And then when we unpack it, a lot of the times is sometimes primarily, even in the workplace, primarily men are saying that they don't relate to them, or that when they're mad, it doesn't actually look like that, right? So we've also been trained societally that things are supposed to look a certain way, and that's how we see them in the movies and all these different things. And so it's just like this, for me, this forever fun little thing to untangle, because there's so much potential in going, wait, am I really feeling mad? And if we are not explaining it, then people are seeing, if I'm storming around and maybe I'm actually not mad, but I haven't identified it, like saying what it is such a game changer.
Totally.
And I'm sure that just like,
It is.
What is it like when you see them have those moments of like the game changer? What do you witness as a next level of like that freedom that you are probably seeing them experience? It's like,
oh yeah, it's a total, it's shock.
Yeah.
People are like blown away. Like, this is okay to have this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, feelings are messages. They're just messages.
Totally.
I say this all the time. It's like your email box.
Yep.
You get email. Now, if you read your email or look at it or decide what's good or bad and just, trash and file, great. But what happens when you don't? You leave an email box for a while and come back and there's thousands of messages.
Yeah.
Right? And can you find things? No. Where was that? When was that? Where did it go? And especially now how they stack them. I can't ever figure that out. But that's kind of what happens, right? They get stacked into, this all fits into one little pile. And guess what? What got us started actually early on was in my occupational therapy work. I was working at the nursing home, and I was interviewing, I had to work there between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. because I was the only OT in several counties, right? So I was busy. And so that gave me lots of quiet time with my clients. So I'd have conversations, and I always started asking this question about their childhood. What was your childhood like? And I was looking at their diagnosis, and they'd be telling me they had COPD, and they say, "Oh yeah, I had all this anxiety when I was a kid.
Oh man,
really fearful. My dad was, this or that or whatever. And the people that had colon issues had, anger, rage issues, abuse issues.
Yeah.
Right. And it was really particular and really specific. And I was like, we got to figure this out. Well, it turns out somebody already had. And you can look this up. What emotions cause different diseases.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you can just totally go down the list, right? This is how it works. Well, it turns out these emotions are, if you don't move with them, movement is life, right? Back to that, if we have this, if you don't move these emotions, they stick.
Yeah.
Just like emails that aren't filed.
Right.
And they're stuck there, and they take up their own existence, and they become toxic.
Yeah.
This is what midlife.
And then if we don't cry out our toxic tears.
Yep.
Exactly. There you are again. The toxins stay. And so this is what midlife crisis, quarter life is the new thing, right? I have a quarter life crisis.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so
that's the new buzz.
and so why? Because you've had bad strategies for a long time.
Well, and in relationships, it's so easy to get triggered and then to respond in that triggered place and to say and do things that you would never say or do otherwise. And so what we help couples do is we help them communicate with the feeling language so that instead of going into a trigger, they take that time, take a breath, take a few minutes, whatever that looks like, and then express what's going on in their hearts instead of going to that, hitting the nuclear button, because that is way too easy. And what we have consistently is we have about the third week into working with a couple, we have, or on a weekend when we do weekend retreats, people can get this in less than 3 days in a retreat. It's amazing. But at 3 days or 3 weeks, these clients they're saying, wow, we've never felt so connected. And generally it's the women, not all the time, but the women are like, I just love hearing how he's feeling.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I get it. And he's saying, and I feel heard and understood. And like with Jami and I, one thing that we love to teach people is be careful about what you make up. Yeah. So with Jami and I, and this is to this day, I always make up if he's grumpy or he's distant, that it's something about me. And this is funny because I know that most of the time it's not. Yeah. 99.9% of the time it's not me. So now instead of being like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? That was kind of my common thing. I'll say, okay, right now I'm sensing distance. And I'm making up that you're upset with me about something. And
damn right, woman. You just get your together, be all fine.
Is that accurate, or what else is going on?
No.
And generally, what he says is, let me think about that. I'm not sure. Oh. Oftentimes, he's not even sure why he is in that space, or he'll say, I was really thinking about this other thing and processing it, and so I was distant, and that wasn't my intention. I want to be connected. Yeah. So it's just in the just checking changes the conversation. If I'm let me ask you, if I'm constantly saying, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? All day.
It's not aggravating. No, it's now I'm getting concerned because I'm like, okay, it's either I'm acting really weird or she's upset, right? And which is the reality? I don't know. Yeah. Right? And so, and that's what, this check-in that we do, we can stop and say, okay, right now, this happened. Yep. And I feel these 3 feelings.
Do you call it out as a check-in?
Not always spontaneous.
Well, okay. Or you just are aware with it.
Not in the spot. Yeah. But Jami and I have been doing this for so long, we kind of drop into it. But with our couples, we say, you can call a check-in for a check-in anytime.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, where do people do that? Because like at your groups, when you have like your weekly meeting, however often, you start with a check-in, which is a great starting point. And how, like a way to implement that, like what we suggest, how do we get people started down the check-in
you get it on your calendar,
becomes flow like butter.
You get it on your calendar, put it on your phone, and to a time that's usually going to work.
When Jami,
once a day for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So when Jami, so there are rules with check-in. So with check-in, if you're sitting down for a formal check-in, because you can do what I said anytime, because checking is very important. Yeah. But check-in, it's sitting knee to knee is great with your palms up.
Turns out palms up works. I don't know why. We learned this from Bob Goff, who's a lawyer, who said he does this under the table at tense legal meetings.
Oh, changes really? Everything. I know I've read about palms up in some different books and stuff too.
I don't have a weapon.
I read too many different books that I can't remember what, but like from like the Buddha. I mean, there's something in like the whatever. I don't remember. Yeah. I read too many books. I don't remember which information came from which books. So I don't cite sources because of that. I just know that I remember hearing
somewhere.
palms
it's
up.
in the Google somewhere.
Palms up is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. It is. It really does. When you're going to speak to, as a matter of fact, it's not even just palms up. If I want to be positive with somebody, connected in a good way, I'll point my palms toward them wherever they are.
Oh, nice.
Right. So if over there, I'll just point this way.
The positive energy, I'm shooting it at people. Yeah. Exactly. Pew, pew.
It's my human sonar. So you're sitting knees together, palms up.
Palms up. And you take turns, not speaking, so one.
Okay. No not speaking, so you're singing? No, just kidding.
Quietly. I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling.
Well, you're allowed to have active listening noises, but no words. Okay. When your partner is checking in. And the way we do it is guys check in on odd days. Okay. And ladies check in on even days.
So we don't get an argument about who starts.
Because you can fight longer about who goes first.
Yeah.
Than actually doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people don't start because they're arguing about
framework is a beautiful thing.
It is. Structure helps.
Yeah, we love it.
Right. So you just set that up.
When Jami's talking, we're knee to knee. We're having soft eye contact, no
Soft.
staring each other down,
Nothing
no
intense.
rolling of the eyes.
Number one rule, no
That
rolling.
is actually Gottman, the Gottman Institute. Fabulous. If you want research on relationships and what works and what doesn't, cool, because they're validating all the things that we've been teaching for 28 years.
Yeah.
And
nice.
so that one of their number one things is he can tell within 5 minutes if there's any eye rolling. Generally, the relationship is not going to last more than 5 years unless they do some serious work.
Oh, wow.
What's really interesting about that is he walks
Oh
into
my
the room.
gosh.
He walks into the room and he says, "Oh, we'll get started in a minute. Tell me about your dog." And within 5 minutes, he can predict within 90% accuracy how long the relationship will last.
If they don't do
Wow.
anything, right? Work matters.
Yeah, the work
Doing
matters. It works
Yeah.
when you do the work,
Yep.
right? You get the result. And that's why we're doing this podcast, is because we want couples to be able to have access to the tools that really work, and a way to engage in those tools that will let it be easier for them to learn them. Because we just haven't in our culture done this.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about like the fact that, I mean, it's a lot. This is a lot. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Let's lighten things up as we're on the kind of home stretch here of what are the benefits of doing these things? What would inspire people to want to invest so much effort
Better
Oh my
into
goodness,
this
the
difficult
best
work?
sex ever. Okay, so yes,
There you
and.
have it.
Yes, and
There you
right,
have
right.
it.
So
That's
that's
right.
if I had heard that from somebody 10 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, that's great, but not my number one priority, right? But
Until
Jami and I have been together, like I said, for a long time. And you know how people say after the first few years, passion fades and that super connected, intimate energy fades. And then you get into this very relaxed, connected space. Sorry, but that's bullshit. Why I say that is oxytocin never stops growing. So you grow those oxytocin receptors, and you can experience what Jami and I get to experience is that we work very diligently on getting these oxytocin receptors going, doing the feeling work, all this stuff. Forgiveness, huge. Something we haven't talked about. Next podcast.
You're right.
But we do this, and our oxytocin receptors must be growing gangbusters because it just is better and better and better.
Yeah. Well, okay. And maybe this is not necessarily where you wanted it to go, but what I'm trying to also think of is when people are experiencing this kind of joy and connection in their personal relationships, how might that be an advantage in, the society we live in
You'd
the
be
corporate
amazed
space?
at how many of our
Yes.
past clients are multimillionaires now. And they weren't when they
I
came
wouldn't
to
be
us.
amazed, but some of our listeners might be. So
Yeah.
expand upon that. Let's
Well,
talk about
everybody does better. There's three benefits to answer your original question.
Yeah.
There are three major benefits. First of all, you get more connection here.
for sure.
And when you have peace and connection here, then your kids benefit, your work benefits. So the three
And
things.
your legacy is changed
Mm.
from
So first of all-
possibly not having a legacy of connection and joy and peace and those things.
Sure.
It changes. It totally transforms everything. And actually with grandchildren now, it's like legacy is really important.
Oh,
matters.
yeah.
It really matters.
Totally.
So you get your relationship
Yep.
better than ever. Oftentimes people say that.
Yeah.
We're happier than we've ever been. You get an upgrade at work. Now that might look like a better schedule. It might be a promotion. It might be different work,
Yeah.
right? But almost everybody comes to this place of, oh, you know what? I can make this work better. I can see a better way around it.
Because it's got to have ripple effect in these other
does.
spaces. And they're if you're feeling better at home, you're feeling like I got this swagger.
Confidence
in
comes
life.
in, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and something we actually say to people is that if things aren't working well at home, you're taking it to work, you're doing it. So productivity is very much affected.
Sure.
So your productivity is probably down. Your energy is gone. You're exhausted. You're not communicating effectively. So yes, it impacts everything. And the community piece, if indeed couples could do the work, this kind of work, and get to the place of connection that we get to experience and our clients get to experience, our communities will transform.
No
There's
doubt.
no.
Is that what the third was?
Well, the third one is actually the financial benefit. So you get a better
Oh, okay.
situation.
Yeah, I was like,
at
I know I
work,
got the first two. I
which
was going to
then
come back and make sure we
also-
get your third thing.
Right, which leads to, okay, so the work gets better, so you usually make a little more money.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Right, but also you're making better choices. You're not self-soothing with
Yes.
so much ice cream or whatever it is that you buy. Right,
Shopaholicness maybe fades out a little more,
Yeah.
or
And you get a
just
little
be
more
more
focused.
strategic. Okay.
Because communication now is working better, and now we can talk about what we really want. So the very end of our process, we do values, and so we filter. Your feelings. You got to feel your feelings, right? This is a big deal.
Yes.
But they don't make your decisions for you.
Right.
Well, and we all have shadow values that we are, my value is growth and joy. My top two values are growth and joy. But then the shadow value is perfectionism and procrastination and those kinds of things. And we all have those shadow values that when our shadow values hit up against each other, there's major tension that can come from that space.
The strategies have stopped working.
Yeah, values
Yeah.
matter.
We need a new strategy, a new system to follow, and that's where we get communication on it. And then finally we're able to then filter our feelings through our values
Yeah.
and make good decisions all the time. And you can tell somebody that's done the work because they communicate very clearly.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? They know what they want. They know how to ask for it. They know how to ask for help
Yeah.
sooner. Right. And all of these things we need to talk about more. Obviously, we're running out of time today, but this is why we're doing this podcast. These are very interesting topics. We have lots of stuff that we want to talk about.
Millennials, interestingly, are the ones that are most proactive to get help. And
Yeah.
it's amazing because
think it's
our
very
client
cool.
base is probably 80% millennial right now.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I think that's fascinating. And I commend the younger generation, and I do feel like we're in good hands,
Me too.
for those that actually get to grow to adulthood.
Yeah, I know.
And so, but it's so interesting because now we really are centered in like this intentionality. Like you've talked a lot about the strategies that we unconsciously came up with as tiny humans navigating our terrain, whatever we had. And now we're flipping the script and empowering people to unpack their bags, chill for a minute, before we go further on our journey. Let's see what equipment do we need? Like that literal transition can happen. And I think it's pretty remarkable that the younger generations are like, they're so sharp. Even my 6-year-old, like he has it pretty well figured out. I'm like, kids really are incredibly intelligent young humans.
They are.
They just need a little guidance and love and reassurance, and they're gonna chart their course, but change things
Right.
drastically, I think, for our society.
Well, open
because they're
communication.
so
I agree.
Opening up communication where we've had so many taboo topics.
Yep.
Right.
Totally.
It changes everything. So I thank you, Megan, for joining us today. This has been a
so
great time. I think we went over time here.
Yes, and
Oh.
what we would love is for you to please tell the audience what, give your information, give the deets, give all the deets about you. Where can they find you?
I'm easy to find on social media, but I feel like my preferred space is I have so much fun on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Kooky Megan, KOOKYMEGAN.
Love it.
And everything kind of funnels through there, but I love to connect with people through there.
Perfect. That's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can get your feeling wheel from my Instagram. It's on.
Yeah.
I have it pinned now. I figured out how to do that. And
Good.
yeah, and that's
And who are you?
I'm at Bringing Back Intimacy Jami.
It's
with
actually
just an I.
Bring, not
Bring
bringing.
back.
It's
Bring
bring.
back.
So it's,
Okay.
and mine's at Bring Back Intimacy Marla. And
there's a kids version of this, by the way,
Yes.
folks. I have both in my house,
is.
actually right at my desk, because I have the adult one for me, and there's a kids version, and we regularly identify
Love it.
all those things in conversation because I want my kids to bypass a lot of the challenges that I navigated as well.
Yes.
So
I'll have
That's
to go
start 'em
home. I'll have to
young.
go home and
That's
put
the
those
good
up on
stuff.
my Instagram now so they can get those too.
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple different ones.
Yeah.
It's simpler and more
get them
complex.
available because people need them for
For
everyone.
those of you not on Insta, we also have a website, which is bringbackintimacy.com. And we are on Facebook too. So you
We're
can
not hard to
find us in many,
Jami and
many
Marla. It
spaces.
comes up with something. And those
Yes,
criminal
Jami-
pictures, that's not
okay,
us.
so to be clear, Jami is Jami.
Yes.
No E, because he just didn't want to have to add the E when he
Well,
was
it turns
kid.
out I have a major dysgraphia. And if you look it up, dysgraphia, you'll see why. Because the name starts on the line and then drops off. And I think the E just fell off the page.
Oh, it must be.
It's over here somewhere.
Makes the same sound with or without that E.
Irrelevant. And if any of you listening or watching decides that this is something that you would really like to at least look at with your partner, a way to approach your partner about this, because not all partners are into this kind of thing or want to. It's very scary.
Yep.
Let them know that we have a free strategy session, super easy to get to know us. We will share what we do. And it's something that we want you to know, because there's two of us and there's two of you. Nobody will ever feel ganged up on. And we will always look at both sides of the equation. So nobody feels like they are the bad guy, no matter what's happened in your relationship. Hey,
blame is just not worth it.
No, Jami and I have been through a lot. And if we can make it, if you know our story, if we can make it, anybody can make it truly. Except for those who might have issues with, true narcissism or whatever that they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I should be the bearer of bad news, but if you bring it up to a partner and they don't want to do work and they're unwilling, that's some good information too, so that you don't live a long, long life of not having an equally yoked relationship.
And I would say do the work anyway. If your partner won't do it, do the work, because the work is worth it. And it does, and you have to dig, but it's not like we're digging up, crazy. We're just doing the work that needs to be done.
Yes.
Giving you new strategies where your old strategies are worn out.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are the best.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So much fun. What a great experience this has been. So yes, we will get back to it. And I did mention forgiveness. Maybe we need to talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it isn't, all the important things about it next time we get together.
Stay tuned and make sure you whatever platform you're listening or watching on, make sure you subscribe so that you'll get all the latest and greatest from Jami and Marla.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.